Well, hello, and I have a short little PowerPoint to give you on the Berlin Airlift. This will go along with the last section of the chapter you read. There was a little section in there about the Berlin Airlift, but I wanted to do a little bit more. You'll also find there will be a short YouTube video link connected to this to help you get it. So why don't we just start right in? So what was the Berlin Airlift? Well, if we remember that Germany at the end of the war was divided. It was divided between the winners after World War II, and there were four of them. So there was, first of all, the Russians. They kept that part of the Germany under their control. And then the British took that section, the Americans got that section, and the French took that section. And so this is how Germany was divided after the war, and each military unit took care of that part of Germany while they hammered out the other problems or the other decisions they had to make. Berlin was the capital. And so the capital city was, of course, very important, but it was also divided into four sections. The problem is that Berlin was in the middle of the Russian zone, which that was going to pose a problem. It's like, how could they have free people or democratic capitalistic governments involved in the part of Germany that was controlled by the Soviets, who didn't believe in any of those things? So if you remember that we had decided with Great Britain before the war that we were going to try and restore every country to the way it was before World War II. And remember, the Soviets were not involved in that, and so they said, no way, Jose, we are not going to let that happen. And so two countries emerged out of one. So the one Germany became two. There was East Germany and West Germany. And of course, Berlin was there. Now remember, the same thing happened in that city. So what they did was they also divided the city. Even though West Berlin was capitalistic and democratic, it was in the middle of a communist country that was ruled by the Soviet Union. And of course, the Soviets didn't like this. They said, we would like you to get out. And of course, Harry Truman, in his obstinate, stubborn little self, said, I don't think so. We're going to stay right here and protect these people that are in West Berlin. So there were three ways that we could get stuff into and out of West Berlin. We could fly in, and you're going to hear more about that in the video. We could also drive. There were certain roads that they were allowed to send trucks in. And then there was railroad along the way that went into and out of West Berlin. And so because of that, the Soviets decided, what we'll do is we don't want to attack them. Remember, this is the Cold War. We don't want to fight. We don't want to drop bombs. We don't want to shoot people, but we want them out. So let's take away. Now, they had a problem because they couldn't take away the airplanes without shooting them down. And remember, they didn't want to do that. So planes were still in, but, planes weren't that big, and planes were slow, and it was a different time. So they didn't think that planes could actually take care of West Germany. They did close down the roads, and they also got rid of the railroads, so that they actually cut off, they thought, West Berlin from their supply side. And they also cut off the water and food and coal, which Germany is cold in the winter. And so we're going to cut off coal so there's no heating. And so consequently, they thought, well, they're not, what could we do? Could we attack? Would we fight? No, this is the Cold War. We don't want to do that. So actually what they did was they kind of forced our hand. And of course, Harry Truman, being the tough farm kid from Missouri that he was, said, no way, I am not going out of this West Berlin peacefully. We are going to fight, and we're going to do what they don't think we can. And so consequently, this is a picture of the 4 regions of Berlin. And so you can see where the Soviet zone, a lot like the way that Germany as itself was divided up. So they cut off all rail access, and Truman was the guy. He was the president. And like I told you, he was a tough, feisty little guy. And a lot of people didn't think he was going to be up to this task. But he decided we were going to do it anyways. And so the city was divided the same way that the country was divided. Now you see there are 3 lines going to and from Berlin, and in the video it'll talk about how this worked, but it was really tough. We didn't have great radar, we didn't have great radio communications, and we also didn't have computers for scheduling. Plus, there's only so much room in so many airports in Berlin that they could use, and that means the planes had to land, they had to unload them, and then they had to get out of there because they needed room for the next plane to land. So it's pretty amazing. In fact, it's almost miraculous that we were able to pull it off. All right, so 24 hours a day, they scheduled planes to come in and out of Berlin and loaded those planes with food and water and coal and gasoline and everything else that was needed by 1 million people. And just think of that, the staggering amount of stuff that was needed to make that happen. So, of course, the people that lived in West Berlin were ecstatic. It was watching these planes fly in and out and in and out continuously. It was their lifeline. The other option is we could have left them and surrendered that territory to the Russians or the Soviets, which most Americans and the Germans didn't really like the idea of that. So, in 1949, in May, the Soviet Union finally said, okay, okay, okay. So after 11 months of not giving in, of flying planes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get supplies into this 1 million Berliners that were part of the West Berlin side of the city, the Soviet Union finally gave in and said, okay, I guess that didn't work. And so this was a Cold War victory for the United States. It didn't feel like a victory in the sense that we captured anything or the enemy surrendered, but they did surrender on this particular little battle. So we won. And that is the end of the Berlin Airlift story.